do you reach out to these students without targeting them in a way that feels inappropriate? That's one thing that like I feel is, because sometimes the students who need help the most are the least likely to ask for it. I'm sure you guys have all seen that. And students have told me that, like, directly. They say, you know, I'd rather come talk to you in the summer when I know there will be no other upper income white students who have all the answers in your office right before me. Like, I'm really uncomfortable. I don't want to sit in your office hours with another student because it makes me feel like I can't ask my questions. And so I'm not going to come to your office hours, and I'll come over the summer, maybe. And like that kind of stuff. It's like, how do you reach a student without, like, I don't know. This is what I want to know from you guys.
One thing I've seen, and one thing actually, this some of the question came up last week with Luisa Santos talking about how do I reach out to thinking about how do I better support my undocumented students. And one piece of advice that she gave, which I thought was really rich, and when I look back to the teachers that I connected with the most, or the professors rather, are the ones who put it up front in front of everyone early on, right? So how do you, being vulnerable and transparent in front of the whole class. I don't know who's in this demographic who needs to hear this, but this is part of who I am, part of my policy, part of how I do business. And every time I was in a classroom where the professor was that transparent, I was like, oh, okay, because transparent to me equals trust. And so that quickly translated into that. And so I was able to kind of cut through trying to figure out who this person is, where they lie, what type of vibe, what type of energy they're on, because they're very upfront and transparent. And one thing I think this is true in any industry, every situation, it's hard to talk about what people don't want to talk about, right? But for students like with my identity, not talking about it can be detrimental. And I'm left to kind of make stories and interpretations in our own heads that leads us down the wrong path. So yeah, I think Luisa's advice on just same way of dealing with, like, hey, I have these resources, these are things, I'll keep it confidential, these are things I have in front. And I think that also sets the tone for the students who come from privilege to check, like, oh, wow, there is something that maybe I need to be doing as well to kind of foster this space that the person in the room is setting the tone for. So anyways, I'm happy to hear from other people. I just know my personal experience, and also just made me think back to Luisa's advice last week.
We were actually having this conversation because I'm part of Mastery Learning and Grading accreditation that's happening at our school. So we were having this conversation, which was really weird because undermatching came up in two aspects of my life that I did not know were going to collide that same week. But we were talking about how we can better bridge the gap between high school, a 2-year college, and eventually a 4-year, or high school to 4-year. And something that kept coming up was, how do we get students to ask for help? Because they've, it's hard. And I have students who kind of just look at me and they want to ask for help, but they don't know how to do so even in like their own community, in my own classroom. And I started to realize that I was one of those students. I got into UCLA right out of high school, and I thought it was going to be, just another school. I didn't know what it meant to go into higher education. I was the first one in my family to do so, and I kind of just winged it until I started failing all of my classes my first quarter. And there's nothing better than to go to your really, high expecting mom and say, hey, I'm failing every class and I don't know what I'm doing. And, it was a really hard pill to swallow, but it was the first time that I took tutoring. It was the first time that I sought a counselor. But I was 18 years old and I had never had to do that before. So now in class, I do exactly what Jerome said. I kind of put it out there, and it's a blanket statement to everybody. These are the resources I can give you. This is where we're going to be at. And we need to be comfortable with getting a little uncomfortable with asking for help. And it's setting this precedent of, if I have to come into office hours, cool, I will be there. I will help you with what you need. And I also practice this in now Zooming, because, you know, our chats have our names. So if you don't want to put, you know, a chat, I actually have a Jamboard where you can just pop a sticky, and it's a bike rack. So if you have a question, it's on one side of my screen, it pops up. You know, usually it's anonymous narwhal or whatever, so I don't know who's putting it. But it's helped a lot with bridging some of those questions that students might have during class. And I'm noticing that the more anonymous it can get, sometimes the better. They have the option of like writing their name at the bottom, but that's only if they really feel like that is something they want to have me just fully address.